yeah, if I want to improve my wages in my work life, I need to regularly be equipping myself. I need to be putting more tools in my toolbox.
Tulsa Talks is the podcast that is inspiring people to have everyday meaningful conversations to gain perspective and help the world.
Welcome to Tulsa Talks. Patrick Jones is our guest today. The topic of conversation is, do we need to continue having people continue education and get new certifications and that sort of thing with the ecosystem that we're currently living? Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Craig.
So, what's going on in the tech realm and what's happening in the world that maybe we don't need to continue having these certifications from some people's mindsets?
This is a big beast to tackle because it does impact most households. From a behavioral health standpoint, my biggest efforts have been how can we bring everyone to the dinner table and have everyone setting aside their phones and their iPads and their laptops and just come together and ask like, so how was your day?
Man, hold on just a second. I got to check something. That is supposed to be funny.
Yeah, right. But what I'm trying to say is like technology has infiltrated most households. I came from a conservative background where a lot of it was low tech. We didn't have a lot of extra resources, so we had to make do with what we've had, and that taught me a lot in my upbringing. Um, and I'm talking about it from a nuclear family perspective, where it's just the parents and the kids and the pets and the house.
Yeah.
Just what that impacts all of us because in our consumerism, technology has infiltrated so much of what we do. We're a very logistical society now. But are we channeling that to where it's serving our purposes?
Yeah.
We
Or
have-
is it driving us apart?
Yeah. And I think we need both. That's just my take on it. But I can see a lot of times when I've asked groups that I've led, I've asked them about their views on like technology. Many of them have often said, well, we do know for sure that we need technology in healthcare, without a doubt, that there's no questions asked. That is essential. And as a former X-ray tech, I can speak with some understanding to that because the science is so remarkably sophisticated that we can be aggressive and conservative in a healthy balance.
Yeah. Yeah. Technology is changing so rapidly that it's almost hard to stay trained up on what the new thing is. And
Yes.
then, as well, in the past, the systems have been so segmented that the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing. And I think we can agree that technology, from this aspect, is a good thing to keep people trained up and being able to understand what the cohesive needs are for the individual and the community.
Is it purposeful? I've had a lot of young people express to me, I want to go into business for myself. I want to be my own boss. I'm going to start my own LLC. And people feel very empowered when they have a computer in the basement and an ambitious idea. But what they're lacking is things like experience and consultation and behind the scenes knowledge or a sense of direction as to how to go about that. So and that's that goes all the way up to different levels. Our social media engineers never finished their schooling because they had an opportunity. When an athlete gets a big opportunity, a lot of times they're reluctant to go to school because they don't want to put themselves at risk of injury.
Sure. Yeah. Let's take that next step before we're actually ready to take the next step in life because we're apprehensive of what might happen during life that could keep us from taking that next step in its perfect timing.
Yeah, there's an art and a science in life to being a constructive and healthy opportunist, to know when opportunities are there. I lived with my grandparents while I went to junior college, and I had a lot of baggage. Literally, I had my book bag, I had my gym bag, and I had my lunch sack. So every morning I'd walk out the door with all my baggage, and
And that's kind of hard on your back, right?
it is, yeah, yeah. And I had really bad vision, so I was always like hunched over, and my vision has improved since I had a treatment, and I'm very thankful for that. But I had a lot of different awkwardness moments about my past. But when I'd be going out the door, uh, my grandmother would start sharing some of those Latin expressions because Semper Fi ran in my family from the Marines. But she would also share with me Patrick Carpe Diem, seize the day. And if you knew my grandparents, for them to share that, and with me being so traveled as a youngster that not really anchored any particular place, to be staying with them and learning from their years of success, and then being told, "Hey, Patrick, carpe diem, go get it, grandson, carpe diem," without really being clear as to how that's going to happen. But like, have you ever been in a culture or a gathering of like, don't you bother coming back unless you're bringing something home, you know? You know, we have a high demand on outcomes and getting results.
Yeah.
Do something.
Yeah, and that's what this podcast is about helping people see where they can go and do something with their lives differently than they might have thought about in the past by seeing life from a different perspective and maybe seeing around a corner that they could actually be damaged by because that question wasn't asked. And with that being said, we're talking about certifications and furthering education today. And you just illustrated how your grandparents said, go get it. And we
Yeah.
expect you to bring something home that you've received to add to our lives as we're here to support you and live our lives as well. Tulsa
Hmm.
Talks, all about it. What do you think about certifications and ongoing education as needed, and also what the greater public uh, atmosphere is for that?
This impacts a lot of different ways of life. Uh, but I think about one of the spokespersons that I've heard talk about these things before. Um, there's really good teaching on with certifications and conforming to a program, to getting with the program and seeing it to completion. A lot of times people say, I don't have time for that. I need to make money right now. And that's an understandable perspective. And it may reflect upon family systems or individual perspective. Uh, I heard a professor speak to the classroom and say, some people will never know what it's like to make $50 an hour. And then speaking with this classroom of college students, one of the other messages was, we know that you're scanning YouTubes and online videos for hours on end at midnight, 1 a.m. We know that's happening. But that professor's recommendation was, we're not saying eliminate that. Just remember that if you have those ambitions of $50 an hour job, to make sure that that online media and that material is equivalent to that level of quality. that you're pursuing in your work life.
Yeah.
So the message is that can we decipher what is high quality and what is low quality? Can we appreciate high quality messages? So the message that that professor was presenting was, let's not eliminate technology. Let's ensure that the DIY projects online. I've learned how to fix things at home and with my car on my own, and it's taught me more self-sufficiency. And these are things that I'd never learn in a textbook. So I think that the rationale is good. And I've adopted that rationale of, yeah, if I want to improve my wages in my work life, I need to regularly be equipping myself. I need to be putting more tools in my toolbox.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that technologically speaking now, the tools in people's toolboxes has morphed or evolved out of a hammer and screwdriver, and it's become a laptop and an iPad
Yeah.
and those types of technological
Yeah.
mechanisms.
But we still need to have people that surround us with those abilities that have the tools of the traditional trades and the abilities to know how to go forward doing those things for us. A lot of people are transitioning into more tech type jobs because I view this like the industrial revolution, just a technical revolution. And going back to what you were talking about of being trained online of how to do things, we were uh, fairly solid company, one of the top companies that did what we did, which was retaining walls in
Mhm.
the state of Oklahoma. And I would watch YouTube sometimes just to get a kick off of what these guys, how they were training people to do retaining walls and seeing flaws in their teachings because they were just retaining wall contractors from wherever else. And they were like, yeah, you really don't need to do this and you can do it this way. And it was nowhere near by the book, and what they were doing were setting people up for failure.
It sounded like everyone had an opinion too.
They did. And
Well,
we all
what?
have an opinion.
Sure.
And hopefully it's educated,
Right.
and hopefully we're going in the right direction of helping people instead of hurting them, setting them up for failure. And I think that that might be why certification processes, procedures, how you get certified, and how you continue education through a formal training might be able to help you have those safety guardrails.
Well, and I follow what you're saying, and I agree that having the safety guardrails and a lot of times getting education or certification of some sort is regarded as basically kind of a safe move. The Industrial Revolution that you're speaking of is a consequence of ambitious people tinkering with with objects and inventions and possibilities
Hmm.
and finding a way to make it work better.
Hmm.
And I think that what this presents to us is an honest question of if we have a silly rule or a silly guideline that isn't well substantiated
Yeah.
with the actual product
Yeah.
or
Rules without purpose have make no sense.
and those industrial revolution types were challenging that status quo in order for improvements to be made.
Yeah.
And we're indebted to them,
Oh yeah.
to that
Huge
ambition.
move. Without that, we couldn't take this next step into um, the tech realm with automation, and maybe they're talking about having like personal robots within the next decade. And that's very concerning for a lot of people that their jobs might be replaced. But that happened during the Industrial Revolution as well. A lot of people's jobs were replaced through that mechanical automation. And now we're
Mm.
talking about technical automation, which had to have that other step before this one could occur. And I've got friends of mine that are somewhat concerned that do type physical type work, and they're like, what's going to happen to jobs like we have? And I'm like, well, we really don't know, but we're thinking they might go away. What are you going to do next? How are you going to be trained up? What's going to happen?
Can we distinguish high quality, just like the encouragement of not eliminating technology or media, but just recognizing the high quality? Because uh, in our consumerism, are we seeking an expedient product or something that's strong,
Yeah,
something that's resilient?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Something fast or something that's good.
Hmm. And I think that people may feel very empowered with the technology that they have, but it's at the risk of consulting with well-informed experts. And it it's very discouraging to see people very quick to eliminate uh, an expert resource or expert consultation just because have the sense that they've got it all figured out. Because it takes a combination. When I go to my mechanic now for my car, I recognize that my mechanic needs to have knowledge of the computer error reports that gets generated,
Yep.
but they also need to know that old school way of how to problem solve.
Right.
I still remember the era when they would take the tubing off the vacuum cleaner and they'd put one end on the ear and then they would wave that vacuum tube over the engine to problem solve that stuff. And people may have called that guy crazy, but he was isolating uh, the auditory input to be
Mm.
able to determine where is that sound coming from? How can we problem solve this? And that's a guy that understood how the gears turned and worked, but was also able to advance with society both. And
Hmm.
that both part of it is very difficult. But I think that's the world that we live in. Um, with the whole technical training part of it, there's few things that come to mind as we were reviewing that the ambition of the industrial revolution types that are finding ways to make things work better, but with technical training, and I have a lot of just to share, like Patrick, what do you know about technical training? I've gone to junior college. I went to 6 different universities until I got my first degree.
Wow.
4 of them were junior colleges and 2 of them were universities. And it's not because I was a problem child, even though, I mean, I had a lot to work on, definitely. But I mean, I had relatives get cancer and I was driving them to cancer appointments during that time. I did a lot of relocating. My resources were limited and I didn't have anyone give me a free pass. It was basically sink or swim. That's how my family motto has been. And I,
Sink or swim, go out there, live life, and bring something home that you've
yeah,
experienced.
and really don't bother coming back if you're empty-handed. That's not an option.
I
I
think that's a beautiful thing. I think that all of us should go and take life by the horns, so to say,
yeah,
and experience the fullness because we don't have that many years on earth. People say as you age, time goes faster, and today is the day to grasp what it is that we have to grasp for today.
yeah, yeah. I know. I think that everything in society has become accelerated, and we have limited time in our very tight itineraries. We have elementary school kids with Chromebooks and smartphones, and they're telling mom and dad, "Let me see if I can fit you into my schedule."
Wow. So you're going through college, 6 different colleges,
Yeah. Well, junior
junior
college, a
colleges.
lot of JC. I had an injury when I was playing sports. I tore my ACL on my left knee when I was 19. So I was the beneficiary of a great surgeon, and that taught me about recovery. I think when you and I had spoken last, you were asking me a little bit about my background and what has kind of motivated me to contribute to people's rehab and recovery. I went through a lot of my own rehab and recovery, and I developed a very humbled appreciation for the grind of self-care and rehabilitation physically and also rehabilitation cognitively, because it takes both. And
Yeah.
it really
Say it
is.
can mess with your mind if your body gets messed up.
Yes, undoubtedly so. And when people are trying to get back on their feet from being impacted in life, there's the odds are stacked against them. It's like taking 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. I'm damned if I do, and I'm damned if I don't. I feel stuck, and that's what we call in behavioral health a double bind.
Sure.
And when those types of things happen, people don't feel like they have the luxury or the liberty to go into a 9-month program to get that certificate.
Yeah. What's going to happen to my finances when that happens?
Exactly. So there's a lot of factors involved with it. Um, I found work experiences when I had physical conditions to where I could work at a desk or I could work in a less physically active way. And I know that's not everyone's direction, you know, but I'm also going to challenge the thought like, if it's raining, like flash flood raining, I'm not so sure it's in the best interest to have landscapers out on the yard trying to finish the job because it's going to be counterproductive.
Sure. Yeah. You're going to make more of a mess than you're going to take care of. And that can absolutely be a picture of our lives going forward. What are your bottom line thoughts of the importance of certification and moving forward through
This is
continuing
just
education?
this is just from my own background and from being a job coach and having people entering my office and saying what they want. Um, and in a lot of my work history, the transitions of mentality is there's wants and there are needs. And if someone does want, if they feel like they need insurance, if they feel like they need a benefits package, if they feel like they want to start making safer decisions, then they may just want to get that certification. Because I've had guys come into my desk and they plop themselves down and say, I've always been of the mindset that I'm a smart guy. I'm very teachable. I can do stuff with my hands. I can learn how to weld in a weekend and then I'm making cash money. And I'm thinking that's good for you. You're obviously very sharp with that.
Yeah. How is life treating you with that attitude at this point?
Yeah.
Would be a real pointed question of their ability to navigate life the way that they pridefully think that they can at that point.
And it's been that case on some occasions, but then they start consulting with family and thinking it through. And then they're thinking, you know what? I'm going to go speak with Patrick and I'm going to see if he can help me get on that track because now I want to get that benefits plan. I want to get the insurance package. I want to get that confidence from the employer.
Yeah.
That I'm not just going to be jumping into making a cash money opportunity,
Right.
but it's going to be like a little bit more validated.
Yeah. A lot of times
with the formalities.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard the saying, fast money ain't good money. So, and a lot of times that people want to jump ahead in life and not go through a process of self development through that process of achieving something, of setting a goal and getting there over a period of time that allows that person to be focused for a period of time, which proves to them and those around them that they can actually be focused for a period of time.
And that's the concept is process. Can people demonstrate that they understand process? Can they understand that they're part of something bigger than themselves and that they can do their part? When I was an EMT, I learned the value of doing what I was told. I was a part of something greater than myself.
Yeah, being your part.
Being in process, doing my small part.
Yeah.
But small parts added up can have significant consequence,
Oh yeah.
benefit. So I guess what I'm trying to acknowledge is that if someone's in a hiring capacity or someone's in an upper management capacity, a lot of times what they're looking for is someone that understands process. It's a process to
And the
show up
willingness and ability to go through it.
continually and consistently. Can I depend on this person to show up on time? Can I depend on this person to not create more problems with the other staff
Yeah.
or with the customers?
Yeah.
Uh, can can I have more of a complete package?
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes there's a message of that person's got all these certifications. They've evidently got more of a complete package.
Right.
That's not always the case. For me, I think the common ground that I try to gravitate towards is this. A lot of times, and I have people in my family that, and youngsters in the family that, and relatives and cousins and these things, they get the impression that they've got to have it all figured out by the time that they're 14 or 15 years of age. And that's a heck of a lot of pressure. That's a lot of pressure to feel like they've got to have it all squared away. They don't have a 5-year plan. They got a 10, they got a 15-year plan. This is what's going to happen. And then this, and then this. And you got little kids, rocking the Excel spreadsheet, putting all these elaborate plans together and having all this pressure. Like, I've got to have everything chiseled. And that flies in the face of the academic model, because the academic model is built upon the first couple years being general education
Right. To figure out what you want to do.
to sort out different interests and curiosities and to build critical thinking skills.
Mm-hmm.
But is critical thinking skills exclusive to the classroom? No. Critical thinking skills are skills that some people can have to build a home, to to build a business, to come up with a new robotic gadget. And that's not isolated to just a classroom experience, but it's the principle of the matter. It's the principle of sorting out a person's interests and abilities, developing critical thinking skills. And this is where there is a barrier, there's a problem with these early education programs where young people feel like they've got to have it all figured out. And the academic model is giving some opportunity to navigate all of these different factors. And there's going to be a bottleneck effect where their time, their interests, and the resources are going to start gravitating towards a direction.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, I think, a doubt or a worry that unless there's a chiseled out plan, meticulously chiseled out, then it's not going to be effective. And unless someone else has a better idea about how to navigate it, from what I understand, the current model of education is those GE classes, the general ed, just to help people start getting some momentum and start moving some direction. Even if someone's moving the wrong direction,
At least they're moving.
it's movement. Yeah. And that's how I've been as a counselor. When I have someone entering into my office, even if they're disgruntled, even if they're popping off, I'm thinking I can work with this.
Yeah.
Because this person's got initiative, they've got energy. It may not be going the right direction currently, but it can be redirected, or it can be guided, or they can find their motivations and their incentives.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I think these are the factors that come into play with adult learning, with going back to school, or people trying to find a career path. And I did also want to make mention that if we learn from other regions like the European model, because I've had family living out there too, and friends that have studied out there and stuff, there's a lot of perspective in these other countries that they can go to a trade school, they can go to a tech school, they can access a specific skill set, and that can be very dependable. And I think the challenge that technology presents us is that it makes even more room for the theoretical and the concept world. But at the end of the day, it's got to provide an outcome, it's got to give a result. And this is me I am kind of like tooting my own horn with the line of work that I decided to go to. And I'll say this: the difference between professional counseling and just having a coffee shop conversation is that there are progress notes required. So, a progress note is basically doing a summary and chronicling and archiving the progress of the conversation in an academic. They call it a case conceptualization. A case conceptualization is following an outline, and it is presenting the data in a objective way. It's not being all wrapped up in a person's personal life. It's having a formal process to follow.
Yeah.
And I think that there's ways of doing that uh, that are effective, but it the dilemma is that if people think that all that's needed is to go to the coffee shop and have casual conversations on a regular basis, that's going to end up being a academic living in their parents' basement for the next 5 or 10 years, playing video games and not getting out and getting a job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they don't have an understanding of work ethic, and not every part of the work is going to have the um, like the glorious or the enjoyable parts. There's got to be some parts of it that have a demand and have um, a vetting mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
I consider myself to be academically vetted.
Sure. Yeah, you have a master's degree, right?
Hmm.
I would say that that would be academically vetted, and then you go through continuing education series from time to time, I
Yeah,
suppose.
there's a lot of requirements to it continually. And, I guess what I'm doing is making an argument for that pathway, but I also know enough that that's not the only pathway.
So
Um,
find your pathway. Know
yes.
yourself
Yeah.
by maybe getting in touch with a counselor or somebody that is well equipped to help you know yourself. Because to me, I've had to put up with my stuff for 54 years, is how I sometimes help people help me. I'll tell them, man, I've had to put up with myself for 54 years. I hope you can help me the way I need to be helped for 30 minutes. And that breaks the ice because I know that I'm goal oriented and that I'm a person that is driven to get to a reasonable end. And if they can educate me that that's not a reasonable end, that's okay. And so what I'm saying is know yourself. If you're the person that needs to make fast money and that money always slips through your hands and your life's not going in a good direction, maybe you need to put yourself into some kind of a counseling. Maybe you need to actually go to school and get some type of certification
Hmm.
so that you can rewire yourself inside so that you will be employable. Because if you're not employable to somebody else, as far as an employee is concerned, you probably don't want to hire yourself to run your own business. Is that pretty
I agree.
straightforward?
I think that is very straightforward. And the factors and qualities mentioned comes from lived experience too.
Absolutely.
And I think that, I mean, this gets down to a lot of different behavioral health mechanisms of how we recognize our elders, and how we embrace the process, and how we will apply ourselves to tasks that we may not fully understand, that we may not completely agree with, but it's applying ourselves in such a way that we're willing to do our part and understanding one's place. I've been an entry level worker in a lot of different jobs, and I would have to follow a lot of direction. Uh,
Yeah, you needed to be that piece of that mechanism. They needed you to accomplish this task
mhm.
this way so that it could work with that cohesive movement. Is that right?
Yeah, and they say that a boss is really good at giving those directions,
Should be.
and they say that a leader leads by example.
Should be.
And I've benefited from some very good bosses, and I've benefited from some very good leaders. And I think one of the challenges with the technology, once again, is it accelerates communication and it's streamlining everything so much that I think that sometimes people uh, have a difficult time deciphering high quality and deciphering the principles unless they have lived experience to draw from. And and that comes with time. But embracing the process is embracing the process.
Yeah.
And it isn't always comfortable. But you know, even when the efforts are not fully successful, there's still a lot of learned lessons out of that
Yeah.
because we learn about what we could do differently and how we could make improvements.
Hmm.
And when I was a job coach, what I learned was that the hiring managers were so busy trying to keep things afloat and plugging all the holes in the ship that they were not able to spend very much time with me at all. But what they were saying was, we're in such an era and generation now that everything's text messages and abbreviated comments and so much rapid communication style and casual communication style that they were explaining to me that they were, you know, lacking the option to speak with people that could put two or three constructive sentences together in a coherent way because of just how rapid and accelerated technology causes us to live.
And that's a dichotomy of interest to me that technology is supposed to be helping us produce more efficiently, but our lives have actually become so much faster paced because of that. It is illogical that treadmill that we're on of ever increasing steepness and rate of motion on that treadmill, the faster we get, the faster we want things, the faster we want things, the faster we get. And it's a spiral. And
Here's the flaw, and I'm following what you're saying, the spiral and the accelerated and the challenges with it. Take, for instance, say that I don't know much about wood, and say that I've got this great idea. I've just been gifted some of this amazing wood. I'm going to make a tree house. So I only have an hour and a half to make that tree house because of how busy my schedule is. So I'm rapidly scurrying up that tree and I'm pounding that wood into the tree and it's balsa wood. And that balsa wood is like the weakest and lightest and it's not going to hold. It's not like oak, it's not like some of these other stronger woods. So I'm in such a rapid I've created essentially like a cardboard structure and to make the tree house and it's not going to last. And as soon as enough pressure gets applied to it, it's going to break. And I think that that's kind of a dilemma that we can be put in if we're trying to rapidly complete tasks without that knowledge. Now, whether that knowledge comes with a certification or whether that knowledge comes with work experience, regardless, if it's strong and it holds, then that's what people want to have.
So, certification or not, life is a process that we have to experience to be able to grow into what it is that we should be.
Mhm.
And Tulsa Talks, for you that don't know, is a part of the Complete Peace movement where we celebrate every piece, which is every person that is in our lives, including ourselves. We say, know yourself, know the piece that you are, find where you fit, and you will know that you are a piece of the complete piece and have complete peace with that. Thank you for coming to Tulsa Talk today.
Thank you for having me, Craig.
We are here to help you discover or develop your passions, how you can use them, and why you exist. How can we help you help others better?